Hi, I'm here with a spooky story. This happened to me when I was a child. We were having dinner and I noticed that my parents weren't eating their meat. And I was like, hey, don't you like this meat? And my dad said, no, not really. It's a little dry. So my mom got up from her seat and went into the kitchen and came out with a bottle of mustard and put it on her meat and started eating. And then my dad was like, oh, that looks interesting. He took a bite of the meat with the mustard on it, and he started eating it, and he liked it. Then I ran to the bathroom and I threw up. You're not allowed to force someone to eat, and if you do, you could go to jail. Then I ran out of the house and I was never seen again. So when her mom asked her if she wanted to try some, she said no. But her mom was like, oh, come on, just try a bite. And Maggie was like, no, I don't want to. But then her mom forced her to eat some. But a small percentage of people take it really seriously and they start freaking out. And those people are the ones who watch this video to the very end. And for those people, I have another story. And then they both finished all of their meat. And then my mom got up again and she went into the kitchen and came back with another bottle of mustard. She'll put some on her meat, but not too much. And this time she put a lot of mustard on the meat. Like she slathered it on there. And then she looked at me again and she said, do you want to try some? And if you want to hear more of my personal scary stories, follow me on social media. And I was like, no, thank you. Then my mom got really angry and she started yelling at me, just a little bit. And then she looked at me and she said, do you want to try some? And I was like, sure. But when I took a bite of the meat with the mustard on it, it didn't taste right. Like the flavor wasn't right. And so I stopped eating it. Then my mom got up again and she went into the kitchen and came back with yet another bottle of mustard. And she was like, why don't you want to eat? Don't you know that wasting food is wrong? And I was like, but I don't want to eat that. And then she pushed the plate of meat with the mustard on it towards me and she said, eat it all. And I started crying and I was like, I can't eat it all. There's too much. And then she started crying and she said, that's okay. She said, just eat as much as you can. And then she grabbed a hold of my arm and she dragged me into the kitchen and she slammed the door behind her. And I was like, well, and then she turned around and she had this really nasty look on her face. And she said, you're not gone. Now waste food while there are people in the world who go hungry. So I ate as much as I could and I felt sick. It was until I was an adult that I realized what my mom did that night was actually illegal. When I tell people this story, most people think it's really funny. This happened to my friend Maggie. Maggie's mom was making meatloaf for dinner and Maggie didn't like meatloaf. Well, after Maggie ate some, she started crying and she ran out of the house. She was never seen again. If you enjoyed this terrifying tale, please stay tuned for more. Hi, I'm here to tell you a horror story. This one was sent in by a listener. It's about mustard. Let's begin. It was just another ordinary day at my job working at the front desk of an apartment complex. We get all kinds of tenants, so we have to be prepared for anything. Most of the time it's pretty boring. She was well dressed, if a little flashy, and she had this large brown purse with her. He was doing a routine check of the vacant apartments on our floor when he noticed that someone had apparently used the vacant apartment's phone to call a locksmith. He said that there were signs of a struggle and that the door to the apartment had been kicked in. When I heard this, I immediately knew that it was the same woman from earlier. I tried to call 911 again, but no luck. I was about to call security when suddenly the lights in the apartment turned off, plunging us into darkness. I could still see the outline of the figure on the monitor though, and it was moving fast. It ran into the bathroom and turned the water on. I could hear the sound of running water, and then it stopped. Silence. I waited, but whatever it was didn't come out. She asked if she could use the phone to call a cab. He let himself in with his key card, and I explained what I had seen. The guard came rushing back into the office. He looked wild-eyed and scared. He told me to get out of there as fast as I could, because it wasn't safe. And if you have a story to share, please send it to the email below. I'll see you next time. Apparently, when he entered the apartment, he found that everything had been destroyed. The place was trashed. There were hundreds of dollars worth of damages and there was blood everywhere. Whoever this woman was, she had turned out to be a homicidal maniac and she had barricaded herself in the apartment. The police eventually tracked her down and she was arrested. He said that he would check it out and to call him if anything else happened. At this point, I was getting a little freaked out. Our building has 24-hour security, but they were on their way off shift and wouldn't be back for another hour. To this day, I don't know what that woman's story was or why she did what she did. I do know that I never want to see another jar of mustard in my life. I tried calling the police, but our line was always busy with people trying to report suspicious activity. I told her that we didn't have a phone for tenant use anymore due to so many people taking advantage of it. I rushed over to the security monitor to see what was happening. What I saw made me drop the remote. The door to the apartment had been propped open using a broom handle, and there was a figure inside rummaging through the kitchen cabinets. I watched in horror as the figure began pulling out jars of condiments and flinging them across the room. First it was ketchup, then mustard, and before I could look away, the mustard hit the security camera, leaving a large yellow stain. She insisted that it was an emergency and began to rummage through her purse. I told her that if she didn't leave right now, security would be called. She got very flustered and apologized profusely, then grabbed her things and left without saying a word. So when something finally happens, I'm usually pretty excited. I was working in the afternoon shift when a woman in her mid-60s came up to the desk. I thought nothing of it until later that evening. when I got a call from our maintenance man. I checked the security cameras and saw that after she left the lobby, she went straight to the elevator and rode it up to the 14th floor where the vacant apartment is. As I sat there waiting for a response, I started to hear some commotion coming from the vacant apartment. At this point, I was sure that it was some kind of crazy person that had gotten into the building, and I wanted nothing more than to get out of there. Then I heard a knock on the door. I screamed and hid under my desk. It was the security guard. I waited for what felt like hours, but it was only about 10 minutes. The next day, I came into work and the apartment was still being cleaned up. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like and subscribe. I work at a grocery store as a night stalker. We get a lot of weird stuff in the middle of the night when no one is looking. The store I work at is 24 hours, and we get deliveries at all hours. One night I was stocking the cereal aisle and this delivery guy comes in pushing a pallet with just mustard on it, like at least 15 cases of mustard. I thought that was weird because we barely sell any mustard and the stuff on the pallet was old. It was this horrible, gut-wrenching scream. I instantly regretted not bringing my pepper spray. My job is to just stock shelves. I slowly looked over the top of the boxers and saw the most horrifying thing. I looked like I had been in an awful car accident, where mustard was the only thing that was left to paint the scene of the crime. I walked out to the front of the store to wait for someone to come in and clock me in so I could go home. The cases of mustard had been opened, and the mustard was going everywhere. It looked like something you'd see in a horror movie. They all looked at me funny, like I smelled or something. I looked down and realized that I still had mustard on my clothes. That's when I knew. That monster, that living, breathing, screaming canister of mustard had followed me home, and I was pretty sure that the killer was inside the store. I didn't want to go back in. I wanted to tell somebody that there was a literal monster in the store, but I knew nobody would believe me, so I just went home. I ran over there and grabbed some paper towels and went back to the mustardy creature. It was still there, squirming around on the floor. I started to scream for help. I don't know if anyone was there to hear me, but I didn't care. I just kept screaming, and I threw paper towel after paper towel at the thing until it stopped moving, like it was oozing out of the cases. Then I saw it move. The mustard was alive. I don't know how else to explain it. It was like a giant yellow slug with seeds in it. It was squirming around on the floor, and it left a trail of mustard behind it. I'm not allowed to throw anything away or even clean up messes, so I got a broom and a dustpan and slowly made my way to the screams. Like the Best Buy dates were from last year, I put the newest in front and the old stuff in back. I didn't think much of it and went to check on my other aisles. I didn't see anyone else in the store, but I heard the screams again. This time they were closer. I started to panic. I didn't have anywhere to hide. There was nowhere to run. I started to think maybe I should have thrown more than one box of cereal away last week when I found roaches in them. Maybe I should have called pest control. Instead, I just swept the roaches into the wall voids. About 30 minutes later, I heard what sounded like screams in the middle of the night. It was coming from the cereal aisle and it sounded like the person was in pain. I freaked out and ran out of the cereal aisle. Then I remembered the cleaning supplies under the sink. By the time the sun came up, I had made a huge mess of it. I had mustard covering my hands and my clothes. That's when I saw it. On the ground outside our store was a giant mustard stain. The next day I went back to work and nobody said a word to me.